The rain came down in sheets so thick it blurred the world into shifting shadows and silver light. Wind howled through the streets of the small coastal town outside Seattle, bending lampposts and rattling signs as if the night itself were angry. Elena Rivera clutched her babies close, one in each arm, their tiny bodies trembling beneath soaked blankets that had once been soft but were now heavy with cold rain. She pressed her cheek to their heads, whispering promises that broke in the wind. "We'll be okay," she said, though she could barely hear her own voice. "We'll be okay, my loves." Her shoes were ruined, her clothes plastered to her skin, her breath white against the freezing air. The grocery store she had taken shelter beside had closed hours ago, its glass doors reflecting the desperate figure she had become. Only a few days ago, she had still believed Mark would change. Only a week ago, she had still had the keys to their apartment, the last of their savings in her purse. Now, the purse was gone, her phone dead, her bank account empty. Mark had taken everything and disappeared. She had called the shelters, begged for a room, but every line had been busy because the storm had driven half the city indoors. So she had walked until the babies began to cry from hunger and exhaustion, walked until her legs gave out. Lightning split the sky, and for a second the world turned white. She saw the reflection of herself in the puddle at her feet and almost didn't recognize the woman staring back, her hair plastered to her face, eyes red, lips blue. Another step, she told herself. Just one more. But when she tried, her knees buckled and she sank to the pavement, clutching her children as thunder rolled overhead. Her body shook from cold and fear, her breath shallow. She whispered a prayer she had not spoken since she was a child. "God, please, not like this." Miles away, Daniel Hayes drove through the storm like a man chasing ghosts. The wipers fought the deluge, but nothing could clear the memory of another storm, another night, 2 years earlier. His wife's voice on the phone, her laughter fading into static, the sound of twisting metal and silence that followed. Every year, he drove the coastal road on the anniversary, torturing himself with the what-ifs. What if he had gone with her? What if he had called her back one more time? He lived in a mansion, no longer a home, with money that solved everything except grief. Tonight, the headlights caught something in the road. A flash of movement, a figure stumbling with 2 bundles in her arms. Daniel hit the brakes, tires screaming against the wet asphalt. For a moment, time stopped. Then he was out of the car, rain hitting him like nails. He ran toward the figure and found a young woman on her knees, clutching 2 small children. Her lips were moving, but no sound came out. Hey, it's okay," he said, kneeling beside her. She flinched, instinctively curling over the babies. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. "You need help." The smallest baby let out a weak cry, and Daniel's chest constricted. He shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around all 3 of them. "Come on, let me take you somewhere warm." She hesitated, her eyes wide and terrified, the eyes of someone who had learned not to trust kindness. But when Daniel held out his hand, she saw something there, not pity, not demand, but something she hadn't seen in months. Safety. She gave a shaky nod. He lifted her easily, the babies still cradled in her arms, and carried them to the car. As he settled her inside, the faint smell of milk and rain filled the air. One of the twins stirred, a fragile sound that broke something in him. Daniel turned the heater on full blast, his hands gripping the wheel until his knuckles whitened. The woman shivered beside him, whispering to her children in Spanish, soothing them even as she trembled. He glanced at her, and for the first time in 2 years he saw not a stranger, but a mirror. 2 souls standing at the same edge of loss, caught in the same storm. She looked up at him through tears, her voice barely audible. "Why are you helping me?" Daniel's throat tightened. "Because someone should have helped me," he said. And in that moment, something long dead inside him flickered back to life. Not attraction, not desire, something older, quieter, like recognition. As the car pulled away and the storm swallowed the night behind them, neither of them knew that this would be the moment that changed everything. The next morning, the world outside was grey, and still the storm had passed, but the ocean was still. Restless waves crashing against the rocks, as if they too could not forget the night before Elena woke up in a soft bed, her babies asleep beside her, wrapped in warm blankets that smelled like clean cotton and safety. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. The sunlight filtered through tall glass windows, touching her face gently. She blinked in confusion. She had not seen sunlight from a bed in weeks. She had not felt safe in months. Then she remembered the man, the stranger in the storm, Daniel Hayes. She sat up quickly, panic rising. She was still in her clothes, though someone had covered her with a heavy wool blanket. Her twins Liam and Lucia stirred in their sleep, small fists opening and closing as if they too were finally resting. After a long battle, Elena touched their cheeks. They were warm, not feverish. Her heart flooded with relief. The door opened quietly, and Daniel stepped inside carrying a tray of food. Steam rose from a mug of coffee and a bowl of oatmeal with slices of banana. He looked different in daylight, softer and sadder, his dark hair still damp from a morning run. His shirt sleeves rolled up, showing the faint tremor of a man who had not slept much. "You are safe here," he said, setting the tray down. His voice was low, calm, steady, the kind that made you want to believe him. "You fainted last night outside the grocery store. I couldn't just leave you there." Elena nodded, her throat tight. She hated the feeling of being helpless, of depending on anyone, especially a man. But when she looked at her babies, she knew pride could not feed them. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice small. Daniel gave a faint smile. "You don't have to thank me. I only did what any decent person would do." "No," she said quietly. "Not everyone would have stopped in that rain. Not everyone would have cared." Daniel paused, then sat in the armchair across from her, his eyes dark with thought. "Maybe not, but I know what it feels like to lose everything in a single night. Maybe that is why I stopped." He didn't explain more, and she didn't ask, but his words settled into her like stones, heavy and real. She glanced around the room, noticing how large it was, yet strangely empty, the walls bare, except for a single painting of a woman standing by the sea. Her face turned away. Daniel followed her gaze. "That was my wife," he said softly. "She died 2 years ago." Elena froze. The air between them shifted. She saw now the loneliness in him, not loud, but quiet and suffocating like her own. Daniel stood abruptly, pushing his hands into his pockets. "I'll let you eat. Get your strength back. I'll have my driver take you wherever you want when the weather clears." She wanted to tell him she had nowhere to go, but the words stuck in her throat. She was tired of being a burden, tired of being pitied, but as he left the room, his silence held something different. It wasn't pity, it was understanding. Later, when the twins woke up giggling and reaching for her, Eleanor carried them downstairs. Following the faint smell of coffee, the mansion was vast, its marble floors gleaming, its halls echoing with a kind of haunted quiet. She found Daniel in the kitchen, standing by the window, watching the sea, his expression unreadable. "They're beautiful," he said softly, without turning around. "Twins. That's rare, they're miracles," Elena replied, and meant it. He finally looked at her, and for a moment, something flickered between them. Not romance, not yet, but connection. A thin, fragile thread that both feared to touch. Before either could speak, the front door slammed open. A uniformed guard rushed in, holding out a tablet. "Mr. Hayes." The news said the storm caused a landslide near the old highway. Daniel took the tablet, his expression tightening. Then, shifting to disbelief, his voice dropped. "It was my wife's car. The wreckage washed out of the ravine." Elena felt the air leave the room. She could see it in his eyes, a ghost brought back to life through twisted metal and rain. Daniel turned to her. His face pale as salt. I thought the past was buried, but it seems the storm brought more than just you and your children to my door. And in that moment, she realized this man who had saved her was being haunted too. Not just by memory, but by something, unfinished, something that would not let either of them go. The next days passed in a haze of uneasy calm. The sea outside Daniel's mansion remained rough and grey, like a warning that peace never lasts too long. Eleanor tried to pretend things were normal. She helped the housekeeper prepare meals, she bathed the twins and read them stories in the quiet nursery Daniel had given them. But every night she saw him standing at the window, staring at the cliffs where the landslide had revealed his wife's car. And every night she wondered what ghosts he was trying to fight. One morning, Elena found him in the library, papers spread across the table, photos of the accident, investigators' reports, newspaper clippings, all showing the same smiling woman, Daniel's late wife, Clara. She hesitated in the doorway, unsure if she should disturb him. His jaw was clenched, his fingers trembling as he held a photograph to the light, as if searching for something invisible. "You should rest," she said gently. "You haven't slept since they found the car." Daniel looked up, his eyes haunted. The wreckage was almost 2 miles from where they said she crashed. The report doesn't make sense. The brakes were cut, not worn, cut clean. Elena's breath caught. "You think someone wanted her dead?" He didn't answer, not directly. But his silence said enough. The air in the room thickened, with the kind of fear that doesn't shout, it whispers. Daniel stood abruptly, shoving the files into a drawer and forcing a strained smile. "Forget I said that. You don't need my ghosts haunting you too." She shook her head quietly, but his words were already echoing inside her. That evening, as she rocked Liam and Lucia to sleep, a noise startled her, faint footsteps outside the nursery, slow, deliberate. She froze, holding her breath, thinking maybe it was Daniel. But when she peeked into the hallway, the light was off and the corridor empty, except for a faint scent of cologne drifting in the air. Not Daniel's, a different one. The next morning, Daniel told her he had business in town and would return late. Elena nodded, but couldn't shake the chill of that unseen presence. Hours passed. The sky dimmed, and the storm clouds gathered again. Thunder rolling over the cliffs. She checked on the twins, then heard the faint creak of a door. Downstairs, she thought it was Daniel and called his name, but no one answered. When she descended the stairs, the mansion felt wrong. Shadows stretched long across the marble floor, and a window was open, rain dripping onto the carpet. She closed it, and quickly, but noticed footprints leading toward the back of the house. She followed them to the study, the same room where Daniel had shown her the reports. The desk drawer was open. Papers scattered the files about Clara. Gone. Elena's pulse raced. She heard the door open behind her, Daniel's voice, low and sharp. "Who told you to come in here?" She turned. His face was pale, his shirt soaked with rain, and in his hand was a photograph of her standing by the nursery window, taken from outside the house. He handed it to her, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Someone's been watching you and the twins." Elena felt her knees weaken. Who would do that? Daniel's eyes hardened. "Whoever killed my wife," he said. "And if I'm right, they were never after her, they were after me." Lightning split the sky, and for a moment their faces were illuminated in the flash. Fear, shock, and something else that neither dared to name. The storm had returned, and with it the past Daniel had tried to bury, and Elena realized she and her children were now part of it, whether they wanted to be or not. The storm outside had turned violent again, but the real storm was inside the mansion. Thunder rolled across the cliffs, and wind screamed through the trees as Daniel locked the doors and pulled the heavy curtains closed. The firelight flickered against his face, and for the first time Elena saw fear there, not the kind that comes from danger, but from knowing too much. He had spent the entire night combing through the security footage of his estate. The cameras had caught movement in the gardens, a tall figure standing near the nursery window, watching for hours, before vanishing into the dark. Eleanor held the twins close, trying to keep her voice steady. Who would do this? Daniel looked at her with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of years of secrets. I think whoever killed my wife never stopped watching me. Maybe they think you know something now, or maybe they think I've told you what really happened. He moved to the safe, built into the study wall, pulling out an old envelope. Inside was a photograph of a smiling man standing beside Clara, Daniel's wife. "This is Gregory," he said, her brother. "He blamed me for the crash. I gave him money to start over after the funeral, but he disappeared a year ago." Elena's pulse quickened. "And you think he's back?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Maybe he found out I reopened the investigation. Maybe he wants revenge." The wind howled louder, the windows rattling, as if the house itself wanted to run away. Elena tried to think clearly. "You need the police." Daniel shook his head. "No, not yet. Last time I involved them, someone inside leaked the reports to the press. I can't risk putting you or the children in more danger. I'll handle this myself." Later that night, she couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. She went to check on the twins, but when she opened their door, she froze. The window was open, rain blowing the curtains. Inward, the cribs were empty. Her heart stopped. She turned ready to scream when a calm voice came from behind her. "They're with me." Daniel stood there holding both children wrapped in blankets. "I heard a noise outside. I didn't want them near the window." His tone was steady, but his hands shook slightly. Relief and anger clashed inside her. "Don't ever take them without telling me," she whispered. Daniel met her gaze. "I promise I won't, but you need to trust me, Elena. Someone out there wants to break into this house, and I don't know why yet, but I will find out." He handed the babies back to her, his eyes softening. "You and the twins are my responsibility. Now I will keep you safe, no matter what." The next morning, the housekeeper found tire tracks in the mud near the back gate. Someone had been there during the night. Daniel ordered extra guards around the property, but the unease never left Elena. She tried to feed the twins, but her hands trembled when she glanced out the window. She saw a shape standing beyond the trees, a shadow in a black coat watching her. She blinked, and it was gone. That afternoon, Daniel received a call. His face turned ashen as he listened. Then he hung up and looked at her with eyes full of dread. "Gregory's body was found near the old quarry," he said quietly, "and beside him there was a photo of you and the twins from inside this house. Someone took that picture after Gregory died." Elena felt the room spin. The danger was closer than either of them had. They feared it wasn't just a ghost from Daniel's past. It was someone inside the mansion, someone who knew every door, every hallway, and every secret. And as thunder cracked above them, Daniel whispered the words that made her blood run cold. "Whoever they're not done yet." The next morning arrived under a pale and heavy sky mist rolling off the ocean like smoke. The mansion seemed quieter than usual, the kind of silence that feels alive. Eleanor barely slept. She kept hearing footsteps that weren't there. Daniel was already awake when she came downstairs, his phone in his hand, his face unreadable. "The police found something," he said, his voice low and sharp, "a set of footprints near the cliffs, smaller than a man's, maybe a woman's, and next to them another. Set from heavy boots, the prints led straight to the old boat shed before disappearing into the mud." Elena felt her stomach tighten and whispered, "Could someone from inside your staff?" Daniel cut her off, already checking through a list of names. His tone calm but dangerous. "I trust only 2 people here, and one of them is you, and you shouldn't even be part of this." Elena followed him outside into the morning fog. The waves crashed against the rocks, sending salt into the air. Daniel walked fast, his coat whipping behind him. When they reached the boat shed, he stopped and pointed. The lock was broken inside. The air smelled of oil, and seaweed boxes were scattered across the floor, as if someone had been looking for something under a tarp. was an old fishing boat half repaired, but in the corner something caught Elena's eye, a photograph. She bent to pick it up. It was a picture of her and the twins taken just days ago on the balcony. She turned it over and froze, written on the back. In dark ink was one sentence: "They belong to the sea." Now Daniel took the photo from her hands, his expression turning to stone, and whispered, "Whoever this is, they want to take what I love the way I once lost Clara," before she could speak. The sound of an engine cut through the fog, a car speeding down the private road. Daniel motioned for her to stay hidden as a black SUV came to a stop by the gate. Two men stepped out dressed in dark suits with no insignia. One of them called out, "Mr. Hayes, we need a word. It's about the investigation." Daniel walked toward them, his jaw set. One of the men handed him a sealed envelope. He opened it and his face drained of color. Inside was another photograph, not of her this time, but of a woman who looked almost exactly like Clara, standing by the marina, taken that morning. Elena felt the world tilt. "That's impossible," she whispered. "She's dead." Daniel nodded slowly, but his voice trembled. "The coroner confirmed it 2 years ago." "Then who is this?" The man in the suit stepped forward. "That's what we want to know. Someone used your late wife's identification to withdraw money from one of your old accounts last week." The fog thickened around them. The sea roared louder. Daniel's hand went to his head as if trying to make sense of an impossible truth. Clara had been dead for years or so, he believed, but now the past was rewriting itself. Piece by piece, Eleanor stepped closer and touched his arm. "Daniel. If she's alive, if she faked her. Death." He turned to her, eyes burning. "If she's alive, then the woman I buried was a lie, and everything I've built since was built on a grave that never existed." Flash of lightning illuminated the horizon, and in that brief, blinding light, Elena saw a figure standing far down the beach, a woman's silhouette holding something small and bright, like a piece of jewelry. Daniel followed her gaze, but by the time he looked, the figure was gone, and the only sound left was the endless crash of waves and the quiet breaking of his heart. The storm returned that night, fierce and untamed lightning slashing the sky as if tearing open the past. Daniel paced the study, his phone pressed to his ear, while Elena stood near the fire holding the twins. The news from the investigators had shaken him to the core. They believed the woman seen at the marina was Clara, or someone pretending to be her, and the possibility was enough to make the air in the mansion feel thin and poisonous. Elena watched him, his face hard with disbelief and fear. She wanted to comfort him, but she knew the wound ran too deep to touch the idea that his dead wife might still be alive, or worse, might be the one haunting them, was tearing through every defense he had. "You built." Daniel ended the call and turned to her, his voice a rough whisper. "If Clara is alive, then everything changes. It means she lied about everything, even her love." Before Elena could answer, a loud crash echoed through the hall. Both turned sharply. Daniel ran toward the sound. She followed. Heart pounding, the nursery door was wide open. The window smashed rain, whipping the curtains inside. The twins were gone. Her scream tore through the house. Daniel grabbed her shoulders, forcing calm into his. A voice: "They can't have gone far. Stay here, I'll find them." But she shook her head. "No, I'm not waiting again." They searched the mansion, frantic, calling the children's names, until a faint cry came from the lower corridor. The cellar door was open. Daniel rushed down first, the light flickering weakly from the old bulbs at the bottom of the stairs. The twins sat unharmed on a blanket, their eyes wide but calm, as if someone had been soothing them. Daniel knelt, checking every inch of the room, then froze. The blanket was one of Clara's embroidered ones, from the locked storage where he kept her things. Elena covered her mouth, trembling. Daniel stood silent, his eyes fixed on the old wooden chest in the corner. Slowly, he lifted the lid. Inside lay boxes of Clara's belongings, photo albums, letters, and a small music box. He wound it, and a familiar melody filled the air, the same song that had played at their wedding. But when the lid closed, a piece of folded paper slipped free landing. At Elena's feet, she picked it up, hands shaking, the handwriting elegant, precise, and unmistakably feminine. It read, "You never looked in the right place. I'm closer than you think." The room seemed to tilt, the air thick with salt and fear. Daniel whispered, "It's her. She's alive." Elena wanted to deny it, but the truth hung between them, undeniable. The photographs, the scent in the halls, the broken locks, all leading to this one terrifying thought: Clara had never left. That night, Daniel ordered the guards to search every inch of the estate, but the storm swallowed sound and sight. Elena couldn't sleep. She held the twins in her arms, listening to the thunder, wondering if the woman who had once shared this house was now outside, waiting, watching, jealous of the life that had replaced her. Near midnight, Daniel came into the room, his face pale, his hands shaking. He handed Elena his phone. The screen showed a message from an unknown number. A picture of the mansion taken from the cliffside, lights glowing through the rain, and a single sentence beneath it: "You took what was mine, now I'll take what's yours." The message timestamp was 5 minutes ago, meaning whoever sent it was out there right now in the storm, watching them both. The night dragged on, like an endless shadow rain hammering the windows, as if the world outside wanted to break in. Elena sat by the fire, her arms wrapped protectively around the twins, while Daniel paced the room, his face pale under the flickering light. Every sound made them jump: the echo of footsteps on the roof, the rustle of wind against the shutters, the soft groan of the old house breathing. Daniel's phone rang. Once he answered on the first ring. A distorted voice filled the silence. The message was simple and chilling: "If you want them safe, meet me where the sea meets the dead light." He froze, his blood running cold. The Dead Light was the name locals gave to the old lighthouse abandoned after Clara's accident years ago. Daniel looked up at Elena. She read the truth in his eyes before he even spoke. "Whoever this is, they want me alone." Elena shook her head, her voice breaking. "You can't go, Daniel. If this is a trap, you could die." He met her gaze, calm but haunted. "I can't hide behind these walls forever. If she's alive, or if someone is using her name, I have to end it tonight." Elena stood trembling but strong. "Then I'm going with you." His eyes softened for the briefest moment. "No, you have children to protect." She stepped closer, her voice fierce. "Then you have something to come back to. Promise me that." The drive through the storm was a blur, the headlights slicing through sheets of rain. Daniel's grip on the steering wheel was iron tight, his mind flashing. Between memories of Clara's laughter and the cold weight of the photograph that had started it all, the lighthouse appeared through the fog, a black silhouette against the raging ocean. He stepped out, the wind nearly knocking him off balance. Lightning illuminated the cliffs, and there in the distance a figure stood, cloaked and still holding a lantern that glowed faintly through the downpour. He moved closer, each step sinking into mud, until he could see her face for a heartbeat. His world stopped. It was Clara, or someone wearing her face, the same eyes, the same tilt of the mouth, the same necklace he had buried with her. She smiled slowly and whispered, "I told you I'd always be watching you." Daniel stumbled back, shaking his head. "This isn't possible. You're dead." She laughed, a sound that broke into the wind. "You buried what I wanted you to find." Suddenly movement behind him, heavy footsteps. Someone else was there. He turned, but too late. A blow struck the side of his head. He fell to the ground, vision blurring, the lantern's light spinning above him before fading into blackness. Back at the mansion, Eleanor waited, the clock ticking endlessly. She had put the twins to sleep, but her chest was tight with dread. A noise came from the hallway. She turned and froze. A woman stood there, dripping wet, Her hair tangled, her face pale, but her smile familiar. She whispered softly, "Hello, Elena. My husband has told me so much about you." Elena stepped back, her heart pounding, every instinct screaming that what she was seeing couldn't be real. But the woman stepped forward, her eyes glittering in the dim light. "I am home," she said, and somewhere far away on the cliffs, Daniel woke in the darkness, realizing he was not alone, and that the woman he once loved might not have returned to be loved again, but to finish what death could not. The house was so quiet that the ticking of the old clock sounded like a warning every second, echoing down the hallway. Elena stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the woman who claimed to be Clara Rainwater pooled at her feet, her eyes too calm for someone who had walked out of the dead. She looked at Elena's trembling hands, then at the twins sleeping behind her, and smiled. That smile was wrong, and too perfect, too practiced. Elena forced herself to speak. "Who are you? What do you want?" The woman tilted her head as if amused. "You know who I am, Daniel's wife, the one you replaced." Her tone was soft, but there was venom underneath it. She walked forward, running her fingers along the walls, as if reacquainting herself with her home. "I built this life with him, and you walked in wearing pity like perfume, pretending to save him. When all you did was make him forget me." Elena's breath caught. "This isn't possible. Daniel buried you. There was a funeral." Clara smiled again. "Then where did he bury me, Elena? Because I promise you I'm still breathing somewhere." Her words chilled the air. Her presence felt less like a ghost and more like a storm inhuman. For meanwhile, Daniel's consciousness flickered back on. In the dark, cold stone walls surrounded him, the smell of salt and rust filling his lungs. He was tied to a chair in what looked like the basement of the lighthouse. The lanterns still burned. Dimly near his feet, shadows dancing across the cracked walls. A door creaked open, and heavy footsteps approached. A man stepped inside his face, half hidden by the hood of a raincoat. It was the same man from the photograph's Gregory, but his eyes were empty. Daniel's voice rasped. "You're dead." Gregory removed the hood, his face twisted. "Not dead enough. You should have died that night, Daniel. I wasn't the one who cut the brakes. Clara was. She wanted your money, not your love. She used me. And when I found out, she tried to kill you both. The crash was supposed to take all three of us." Daniel stared in horror, his pulse roaring in his ears. "What are you saying?" Gregory laughed, a broken sound. "You never buried your wife because she made. You sure someone else took her place before the crash?" He leaned in close. "You buried a stranger, Daniel, back at the mansion." The lights flickered. Clara, or whoever she was, stepped closer to Eleanor, her voice turning cold. "Daniel thought he could hide me. Thought he could build a new family, but I've been watching always." Watching, she reached out, brushing Elena's cheek, her fingers icy and trembling. "I should thank you for keeping him company. But now it's time for you to leave." Elena slapped, her hand away, her fear replaced by fury. "You're lying. You don't love him. You just want to destroy everything good that's left." The woman's smile vanished, her eyes darkened. "You'll see the truth soon enough," she whispered, then turned and disappeared into the hall, her footsteps fading as thunder rolled outside. Moments later, Elena heard a crash of glass upstairs. She ran, holding her breath. Daniel's portrait in the main hall had been slashed open from corner to corner beneath it. Scrawled in red paint were the words, "Bring him home." Far away, Daniel's ropes loosened. He tore himself free and stumbled toward the storm, his mind burning with realization. Clara wasn't just alive, she was hunting him and everyone he loved. Lightning split the sky, revealing the mansion on the cliff in the distance. His only thought was Elena and the twins. He began to run through the rain, every step heavier than the last, unaware that the woman he once called wife was already inside, waiting at the nursery window, humming the same song that had once played at their wedding, and the melody carried through the halls like a promise and a curse all at once. Rain pounded against the glass like a warning. The mansion flickered in and out of darkness as thunder rolled across the cliffs. Elena moved through the halls with a candle in one hand, her heart racing. Every light had gone out. The security system was down and the phones were dead. She could feel eyes on her, though she couldn't see anyone. The twins were locked safely in the nursery. She checked the door twice, whispering promises that she would come back. The candle flame trembled as if afraid too. Downstairs, a window shattered. She flinched, spinning around, her voice breaking, "Daniel, Daniel," but only the wind answered. She grabbed a poker from the fireplace and stepped toward the noise, her bare feet silent on the marble floor. The house felt alive again, breathing with the ghosts of memories. Clara's perfume drifted faintly through the air. That same jasmine scent Daniel had once said lingered in his dreams. A shadow moved at the end of the hall. She froze the flickering light, catching the outline of a woman standing by the grand piano, her back turned, long wet hair clinging to her dress. "Clara," Elena whispered. The figure didn't move. Then slowly it turned. Lightning flashed, revealing Clara's face, pale and gleaming with madness, her smile sharp as broken glass. "I told you to leave, Clara," said her voice, calm, almost sweet. "You didn't listen. Now look what you've made me do." The piano behind her burst into a discordant chord as Clara's hand came down hard on the keys. Elena stepped back, trembling, the poker clutched in her hands. "What do you want?" Clara walked closer, each step deliberate. "I want my life back, the one he stole from me, the one you tried to take." She tilted her head. "You think you can replace me with your soft heart and your sad eyes? You think you can love him better than I did, but you can't, you never will." Upstairs, the twins began to cry, their small voices echoing through the storm. Elena's blood turned to ice. She ran for the stairs. Clara's laughter followed her, the sound twisting into a scream as the power finally died, plunging everything into darkness. When Elena reached the nursery door, she found it wide open, the cribs empty. Before she could move, hands grabbed her from behind, dragging her back. She struggled, kicking and clawing, until a familiar voice gasped her name, "Daniel." His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close. "I'm here," he said. "I found you." She turned, sobbing. "Where are they, Daniel? Where are my babies?" He looked toward the stairs, his expression grim. She took them. She whispered something about finishing what began. They ran through the mansion, the wind howling through shattered windows, the sound of music drifting from the ballroom, the same song. From Daniel's wedding they followed the melody through the dark, and there she was, Clara, standing in the center of the ballroom, the twins lying asleep on a white sheet before her, her hands shaking as she held a gun. Daniel stepped forward. "Clara, please listen to me. You don't have to do this." Her eyes flashed with fury. "You let me die, Daniel. You moved on like it meant nothing." He took another step, his voice cracking. "I grieved you every day, but this isn't you. The woman I loved wouldn't hurt children." For a moment something human flickered in her gaze. Then thunder boomed and lightning filled the room. Daniel lunged just as the gun went off. The shot shattered the chandelier, raining glass and sparks. Clara screamed, falling backward, the gun skidding across the floor. Elena rushed to the twins, pulling them close as Daniel crawled toward Clara. Blood on his hand. She looked up at him, tears mixing with rain. "I wanted you to see me one last time before the dark," she whispered. Then her eyes closed. Outside, the storm began to break, the wind slowing, the thunder distant. Daniel sat on the floor, trembling. Elena knelt beside him, holding the twins against her chest. The mansion smelled of smoke and rain, and something new. "Peace," Daniel's voice was hoarse. "It's over." Elena looked at him through tears. "No, it's not over. It's just beginning." Far above them on the cliff, a figure stood watching through the last flash of lightning. Another woman identical to Clara, but older, colder. She turned and disappeared into the fog, leaving behind only a single whisper carried by the wind. It's never over. Not until the truth is buried. Morning came pale and quiet, the kind of stillness that hides what the night tried to bury. The police arrived. At dawn, their lights flashing red and blue against the silver sky, Clara's body was taken away, and the storm finally broke, leaving the cliffs wrapped in fog. Daniel stood on the terrace, his hands trembling, his face hollow. Elena stood beside him, holding the twins close, the air between them heavy with everything that could not yet be said. Hours passed, but neither spoke. Daniel's gaze fixed on the sea, as if it held the answers he could never find. He had survived the woman he loved. He had faced the ghost that refused to die, but peace would not come. Not yet. The investigators told him something strange. Clara's fingerprints were not an exact match. They belonged to someone who looked like her, a half-sister hidden under another name, Elena's. Breath caught when she heard it. So the woman who died last night wasn't her. Daniel nodded, his voice low and rough. They say her real name was Iris. She was adopted by Clara's family after her mother disappeared. They were twins, separated when they were little. No one ever told me the truth. I buried one, thinking it was my wife, and the other found me pretending to be her. Elena stared at him, the weight of it sinking in. This means Clara could still be alive. He turned slowly, his eyes darker. Then the storm clouds, maybe, or maybe the truth is worse. Maybe she never wanted to be found. He looked at her then, at the twins sleeping in her arms. I used to think the worst pain was losing someone. Now I know it's not knowing if they ever loved you at all. That night, as the house finally settled into silence, Daniel walked through the mansion alone. He entered the study, where the fire burned low. On the desk lay a small music box, the same one found in the lighthouse. It was cracked, but when he opened it, the tune played faint and soft. He turned it over and found a piece of folded paper inside, written in Clara's handwriting. It read, "I couldn't be what you needed, so I gave you what you deserved, her." He stood there for a long time, his reflection flickering in the fire. Then he went upstairs and found Elena awake by the window, the twins sleeping between them. She looked at him, her voice a whisper. "Are we safe now?" He nodded slowly. Maybe not safe, but free. Weeks passed. The investigation closed with no clear answers. The graves were moved, the mansion repaired. Daniel sold most of his holdings and vanished from the headlines. He spent his days rebuilding what was left, planting gardens where the ruins of the storm once lay. Elena watched him heal piece by piece, learning to breathe again, learning to smile on a quiet afternoon. Months later, Daniel walked to the cliffs where everything had begun, the sea below, calm and endless. He carried a single rose and let it fall into the waves. For the woman he once loved, the woman he lost, and the one who might still be out there somewhere. Then he turned back to see Elena waiting with the twins, the wind lifting her hair in the sunlight, and for the first time in years, he felt the storm inside him finally rest as they walked home hand in hand, the twins laughing between them. A figure watched from the shadows near the trees, a woman with Clara's face, older, colder, her eyes unreadable. She whispered to the wind, "Let him have his peace for now," then turned and disappeared into the woods, the sound of the music box echoing faintly after her. Back at the mansion, the last light of sunset poured through the windows, bathing the walls in gold. Daniel looked out at the horizon, his voice soft, almost a prayer. Love isn't about what stays, it's about what survives. Eleanor took his hand and smiled, her eyes glistening through the fading light. Sometimes what survives is enough, and as night fell over the sea, the mansion no longer felt haunted. It felt alive, carrying laughter instead of echoes, warmth instead of ghosts, and above it all the sound of the waves like a heartbeat, whispering the same truth over and over. Storms pass, but love remains.